What's up, YouTube? I have literally just walked in the door and sat down in my desk chair after returning home from the PPG Pro Play Summit event that took place in Orlando over the weekend. And the first thing I had to do was put this video together for you guys and go over the meta report from the weekend. There are a couple of tournaments for us to talk about that took place over the weekend. So if you guys love the dedication to Riftbound, again, first thing I had to do when I got home was put this video together. Make sure to like, subscribe, hype the video. That being said, let's go ahead and just break down the meta and talk about all the decks that did well this weekend, because the number one deck is going to be super surprising for you guys, especially if you've been following from the Chinese release all the way to now. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Alright, so first and foremost, huge shouts out to Runes and Rifts over on X.com for a great compilation of this information. They do such a great job. They get all the info super quick. You can see that this event took place on Friday. This was the 5K tournament that took place on Friday. 241 players, and they had the information as early as, I believe, the same day. So very cool there. Let's go ahead and take a look at our top 8. After 9 rounds of Swiss, this is a very similar size to what took place at the Atlanta CCS 12K event. So if we go into the top 8 here, we have 3 Kai'Sa, with Kai'Sa taking first place here. We have 2 Master Yi, 2 Annie, and 1 Set. Honestly, this event, very similar to what we have been seeing in the past. Let's take a quick look at our top 8 builds here. We have the first place list by Andrew Duvall, very strong and renowned Bandai card game player, especially in the Dragon Ball Super scene. So if we look at his list here, I'm going to just go ahead and take a look at anything that might be somewhat of an outlier. First thing I'm noticing is only 2 copies of Cleave. Extremely interesting. This is a card that tons of Kai'Sa players swear by as being a 3 of, and I would be shocked and I'd be hard pressed to find myself playing less than 3. I do side out 1 copy here and there depending on matchup, but playing less than 3 in the main seems crazy because you want to have that synergy with Darius. But of course, there's plenty of times where you can just play a 2-drop and get Darius going anyway, so not a huge deal, and obviously worked out super well for Andrew, so that's really cool. I also find the battlefield lineup interesting just because we are playing a Conquer battlefield with Targons. We are playing just a good Kai'Sa battlefield with Reaver's Row, being able to protect the Kai'Sa survivors. And then we're also playing the Star-tipped Peak. So that mixture of like Conquer and Hold battlefields and then just the good Reaver's Row is interesting. And the sideboard, also incredibly fascinating. We have 2 copies of Bryn Rear Thundersong. This is a card that I was on 1 copy in the side deck for my Saturday run as well. This card just being able to shut down Annie, being able to shut down those flashes, being able to shut down those fighter flights, any of that annoying interaction they're going to have. You're just going to be able to shut it down with Bryn Rear Thundersong, which is incredible. And the other tech that I really wanted to play, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it, didn't have enough experience with it, was the 2 copies of Get Excited in the sideboard. This, I think, is actually a really cool tech and development for Kai'Sa, because the main issue with Kai'Sa is that she cannot deal with units that are bigger than 6 might. Get Excited allows you to discard cards like the Acathian Reigns, like the Time Warps, maybe like the Mega Mechs and the Watchers, things like that, and be able to actually deal damage to units that are bigger than 6 might. So I think that's a very cool development for Kai'Sa, giving you that somewhat of an ability, even though it's very costly. Giving you that ability to actually deal with units bigger than 6 might is really cool. I would kind of expect, like, if this was more of a dedicated Get Excited build, maybe to see maybe more Time Warps, maybe more Acathian Reigns, but that would probably just result in you playing a worse Kai'Sa deck, so I understand why that's not really going on here, but I think the Get Excited thing is super interesting, so I definitely wanted to talk about it here. Let's go ahead and take a look at our next build. Second place, we do have a Master Yi Aurora build, so very similar to what we saw in the Houston Regional, with this deck taking second place once again. Going through quickly here, anything that is out of the ordinary, sort of. I am still a little bit surprised to be seeing Tasty Fae Folk like in a Dazzling Aurora build, because it's not one of the most like impactful units you can see off of a Dazzling Aurora, but I think the main draw to it probably is that when you don't see Aurora, it's a unit that helps you retake control of the battlefield so you don't get blown out in the point parity. And if it dies, you get more ramp, you get more draw, so you're digging through the deck for Aurora, and you're ramping to play your bigger units. So that's probably the reason for it. Definitely a development that I think is just, again, optimizing the Master Yi Aurora build at this point. So very solid stuff. We're going to go ahead and take a look at our highest placing Annie build here at 4th place. Once again, just taking a look to see if anything here is sort of out of the ordinary. Honestly, looks like a very standard build. This could actually just be Sean Dewally's list from Houston. I do remember the one Gus, one Rebuke main. A lot of these other ratios look very, very similar. And then going into the sideboard, again, just some ratio fixers, but also the 2 copies of Draven. Once again, very solid against Kai'Sa because it's a unit that gets above 6 might and becomes very, very difficult for them to deal with. As far as it goes in the mirror match, like, yes, there are cards like Falling Star, which I think Annie is starting to just main less and less ever since Sean won with 0 copies of Falling Star in the entire deck. So now when you're looking at Draven in the mirror match, you're looking at things like Rebuke, which is not something you want to see when you invest 5 energy into a Draven. But I think it's also good against Master Yi because if you can get those early points, you can get the Draven up to a 5, or sorry, you can get him up to an 8 or a 9 relatively easily if you're able to get those early points. So yeah, Draven, probably solid against the other 2 big decks in the format, maybe not as good in the mirror match. That is going to go over the 5K from Friday though. Let's now jump into the big meat of this weekend, which was the Saturday 10K event. All right, so on Saturday for the 10K, there were about 400 players in attendance, so a very, very good turnout, and this is your top 16. So first and foremost, we have MF making just an absolutely unprecedented splash in this format. Seeing any MF alone in a top 16 is super surprising, let alone seeing 5 out of the 16 being MF. And spoiler alert, MF did go on to win the event. We'll take a look at that list in just a moment. And the rest are some of our usual suspects, obviously Master Yi, Annie, and Kai'Sa. And then we do have one set sneaking its way into the top 16 here. Now, what's really funny is, would you believe me if I said Kai'Sa somehow comes out of this format being the quote-unquote most fair deck? Kind of crazy, but that was the conversation around the room in the weekend. Kai'Sa, yes, it is super strong. The cards in the deck are super efficient. They all replace themselves. They have really good removal at their disposal. But you've got Yi and MF leaning into Aurora strategies, which just win the game via inevitability. You have Annie winning the game with insane movement capabilities and then wrapping it up with a Vi Ride the Wind combo that some decks just literally can't deal with. And then Set being able to just protect its units over and over and over and over again. Kai'Sa does kind of end the weekend looking like the quote-unquote most fair deck, which I think is a super funny development coming from the Chinese meta, where everyone said that Kai'Sa was looking like it could be tier 0, maybe with some Yi mixed in there, but now Kai'Sa is just looking like the most fair deck in the room. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at our actual top lists here. We've got very popular Magic pro and content creator Ali Eldrazi taking first place here with MF Aurora. So while yes, it is another Aurora build doing very, very well, it's with a totally different leader and a totally different shell. So basically you're swapping out what Yi brings to the table with the color green, and we're going to see what MF offers in the form of purple. One of those main things, to be honest with you, is Mind Splitter. Mind Splitter is an absolutely insane card when you have Dazzling Aurora in the picture. The first time you hit a Mind Splitter off of a Dazzling Aurora, you have so many options to just like secure the game. For one, you can take their answer to Aurora if they have one. If it's like a sideboarded game, they have something like a Salvage or something like a Fading Memories, you just take it, their SOL. Or you take their next best unit for the next turn. You basically can just map out their play for the next turn and take that card, and then your opponent's going to be in a very, very, very bad spot. So that's one of the advantages to playing MF Aurora over Master Yi. Obviously, when you're not playing Yi as the Aurora leader, you lose certain things like access to Defy, access to Discipline, the ability to just make your units stand alone stronger in combat. But when you're able to just dump tons of huge units into battlefields thanks to Aurora, I don't think the stats for Master Yi are all that important. I honestly think that when it comes to like maybe the unfair part of what an Aurora deck's able to do, I do think MF capitalizes on that a lot more. Plus, you've got consistency pieces like Stack Deck, which is an absolutely insane card. You've got Confront for draw power, and then being able to play a Mind Splitter in active, play a Mountain Drake in active if the situation calls for it's really good. Invert Timelines was also a crazy card on the weekend, being able to just destroy those huge hands that Kai'Sa was able to generate, trying to, you know, put on that onslaught against an Aurora, trying to win as fast as possible. You invert Timelines, take all their advantage away, mess up their hand, and then maybe you're digging deeper into your deck for Aurora, which is crazy. Two other things I do want to call out here is that bullet time is an insane card in Aurora, because once you have your Aurora established, God forbid you have the second one in play, you're able to just use all of your runes for bullet time to absolutely blow out your opponents. Let's say you're up against a Kaisa player, right? And their one saving grace is to maybe drop a Watcher. Maybe they have a bunch of units in their base able to maybe double conquer if this play all goes through. But you've already got a bunch of units in your battlefields, maybe a couple units in your base. You've got Aurora generating your units turn after turn, so you can use your bullet time and just recycle 7 to kill that Watcher and ensure that they don't take the battlefields from you, and you win the game by that. And you don't even care that you really recycled 7 runes, because again, your Dazzling Aurora is going to make you more units turn after turn. So that's a crazy interaction there. One thing though that I think is super fascinating about this list that I don't think we've seen in a lot of other MF builds is 3 copies of Ride the Wind. This is crazy. This is not a card that you would think you would see in a more like go tall sort of like control ramp strategy, but Ride the Wind being so cheap is insane, because if your opponent is maybe trying to sneak the other battlefield, maybe you have like a Kaisa player going for a sneak to the other battlefield, get to 7 points, and then like cast a Time Warp, right? Well, now you have the defensive play of Ride the Wind, move your Mind Splitter or Deadbloom Predator or whatever it is in the one battlefield, move it over to the other battlefield, so they just literally cannot go for that sneaky Time Warp play. Like, there's so many applications to where Ride the Wind just gives you access to insane defense, which is what you need, because you're kind of just losing the early game. Your opponent's scoring a lot of early points, most likely. You now need to play your Aurora, stabilize, and then be able to defend anything your opponent could possibly do to sneak the game from you. And I think Ride the Wind helps do that perfectly well. So while it is another Aurora build, it's definitely interesting to see that MF was finally able to make a name for herself, and that so many MF were able to crack the top 16. We can see the list here. If I move my head a little bit, we can see that the top 8 here, only 2 MFs in the top 8 overall. So many of them did get eliminated in top 16, but still insane that I was able to go to the number 1 spot. Very interesting. Let's take a look at our second place Kaisa build, wondering if it's more of the same. I do believe, to be 100% honest with you, this is the same exact build that we saw win the Friday 5K, because I know that Jonathan and Andrew are teammates. So yeah, pretty sure this is the exact same list. Once again, very interesting on the battlefield lineups, the 2 cleave in the main board. This was a very interesting finals to watch. So if you haven't watched the VOD yet, I think it's on PPG's Twitch, Pro Play Games Live over on Twitch there. But not too much to go over here, just because we pretty much went over this exact list already. Let's go ahead and take a look at the third place set build, which once again is Colin making another solid run after his Friday run and after the Atlanta CCS 12K run. Let's take a look at his build and see what's changed. The first thing I'm noticing is that we are off 3 copies of set Kingpin, which is the yellow set, and we still have 1 copy of set Kingpin. I imagine this is still the chosen champ, but we've brought 2 copies of set Brawler into the main board. This is honestly a pretty massive change, especially for when I was talking to them at the Atlanta event about their build and what was going on with that. They were swearing by set Kingpin, just buff him, get to 7 might. It's a really hard number for, once again, Kaisa to get over, but I'm sure developments in the meta have made set Brawler a little bit more attractive. Probably some of those Master Yis where you just need the bigger might of being able to go to 8 by spending the buff, or maybe even by going to 12 if you can rebuff him and then spend it again. That's probably very important in this format, where we are seeing a little bit of a dip of Kaisa, not too much, but a little bit, and more of a rise of the Master Yis out there. We are still on the 3 arena bar though. I know this is a big topic of contention for a lot of set players out there. Do you play 1 arena bar? Do you play 3? Do you play 0? Is it too slow? That kind of thing. But still here proving to be very good. And yes, while 3 copies can clunk in some unfortunate scenarios, I think having the constant ability to rebuff your units is just unbeatable. Not unbeatable in the sense that the deck can't be beaten, but unbeatable in the sense of like the value you get for playing set. Now, one other thing that's interesting in the sideboard here is 2 copies of Daring Poro. I don't think this was in the sideboard at the Atlanta event. I know one of the issues with their build that they weren't quite in love with was that they only had 7 2-drops in the main board, lowering your odds to somewhere around, like, I think it's 71%, something like less than 3/4 of the time you're going to open no 2-drops, which does feel a little bit bad. So I think we are setting more for matchups, maybe like Aurora, where you really want to had those 2-drop starts. One other thing though, speaking about the Aurora matchup, I am extremely surprised to see no copies of Salvage here, especially with like the uptick of Master Yi Aurora. Super surprising, especially because Colin's team is the one who got second place with Yi Aurora at Houston, and Yi Aurora's also done well this weekend here in Orlando. So yeah, surprised by that, but still very, very interesting. Let's go ahead and take a look at our 4th place Annie build. So 4 unique decks in the top 4. Pretty cool to see. First thing I'm noticing for Taylor's Annie build here is 1 copy of Legion Rearguard in the main. It's something that I also dabble with in Kai'Sa too. Just having that one option of like a really cheap accelerate can sometimes just steal you that final point. It's really, really good for that reason. And then yeah, it's a 2-drop to start with if you ever need it, because having to play a Vi turn 1 does feel very awkward. And this build, instead of going for the 3 Patiporo, is going for the 2 split with 1 Legion Rearguard. Going through the rest of the main board, though, does look relatively standard, and the sideboard, once again, just those ratio fixers and the Draven makes a lot of sense to me. I do want to skip over to 8th place because that is going to be our final unique leader in this top 8. So we'll take a look at the Yi build, which once again is a Dazzling Aurora build. So not a great weekend for Yi mid-range, although this build is smoke screening into it. We can see with the 3 copies of Clockwork Keeper and the 3 copies of Stalwart Poro in the sideboard. So there is that sort of saving grace, but this is really interesting. Gonna be very surprised to see how Aurora does going into set 2 with all of the much, much cheaper gear removal that a lot of these decks are getting. We have red getting a 1-cost gear removal. Yes, the opponent draws 2 cards when you play it, and it can be defied, but that's still an insane 1-cost here, 9-cost Aurora that I'm very interested to see how that's going to play out. But that is going to cover the meta for this event. Obviously, biggest takeaway from the weekend is the 1st place MF build doing something that I don't think anyone expected, which is sort of be able to play ball with the Kai'Sas, the Sets, the Annies, and the Master Yis of the world. But overall, guys, I want to know in the comments below, what do you think about the way set 1 format is shaping up? We are seeing quite a bit of uptick in the Aurora builds, which not the most interactive or fun way to play the game, but there's still other decks there that can do very, very well. Let me know in the comments below what you think. What are you looking forward to in Spirit Forge? Once again, don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Maybe share it with a friend who's new to Riftbound, and I'll see you guys in the next one.